be done in Ladakh and what was going to be done in Jammu. While I work in Gujarat, I was born not very far away from Srinagar, sir, in fact, in what is now Pakistan. And I remember thinking that how well we have thought of this vision, how technology can be integrated with it, how resources can be integrated with it. And I think all of that you will have to capture again. There's only one other thought that I have for you, Mr. Chief Minister, and I will end. There are problems in the immediate borders of the country, close to Kashmir, but beyond that we have friends. I recently accompanied the Vice President to the Central Asian Republics, and whether it is Kyrgyzstan or whether it is Turkmenistan or whether it is Uzbekistan or Kazakhstan, we all have friends. And these friends are not that far away. In fact, with modern communication, you are talking about really hundreds of kilometers and not thousands of miles. With modern communication, with airlines, I look forward to you, Chief Minister, helping the country in crafting its role, its vision in the region as a whole. We are playing an increasingly important role in the subcontinent. And I think of the eastern region also, eastern side, people are talking of linking up with the wider region. But I'm sure we can rely on you to try and operationalize the Indian dream of linking up with friendly countries and friendly economies in a larger plane across. And so we look forward to you, sir, in terms of this larger vision. And as an economist who is more a carpenter, I can assure you that we will do our level best to support the realization of the objectives of a strong and prosperous Jammu and Kashmir. Chief Minister, my best wishes.
Thank you, Professor Adar. Now I will request former Union Minister Dr. Karan Singh, Mrs. Sati Karan will put the
Chairman of this evening's function, the distinguished jurist and dynamic election commissioner, my good friend Shri G.V.G. Krishnamurthy, organizers of this function, Dr.Farook Abdullah, whom I have known since both of us were teenagers, if you remember those days, all the other distinguished guests in the audience and speakers. 49 years ago to the date, my father, the late Maharaja Hari Singh, signed the instrument of accession. I was in the house at that time. Kaur Sahib spoke about people making history, people witnessing history. I was in the house on that dramatic occasion. The whole structure was collapsing around us. Hordes of barbaric invaders had begun violating the sanctity of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And it was a nightmarish situation. And I remember vividly, I was a young boy at the time, I was 16 years old, I was in a wheelchair, I was unable to walk. And I have described it in my autobiography as to how the jackals were howling at night in Kashmir and how death and destruction was descending upon our once beautiful state. Almost half a century, friends, has passed since that historic day. And how much history have we seen in these 49 or 50 years? We have been witness to triumph and tragedy. We have been witness to moments of great exhilaration and moments of deep depression. We have been through it, we have lived through it. I was 18 years old when I became regent. And from then down to the present day, one has been witness and a participant in the history of Jammu and Kashmir and of India. At that time in the state there were two powerful personalities. My father Maharaja Hari Singh and your father Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah. Had these two strong personalities been able to understand each other better, had they been able to develop a rapport, perhaps the history not only of Jammu and Kashmir, but the history of the subcontinent and of Asia itself would have been different. However, they belonged to two different worlds, to two different mindsets, and perhaps in the way history was developing, a confrontation was inevitable. And today we remember them. We remember both those great people without whom Jammu and Kashmir would not have been a part of India. In fact, Jammu and Kashmir would not have existed at all. It would have been by now fragmented into 100 small pieces. And so today when we remember them, we remember also the history of the last half century and all the strange events that took place. And the last 7 years particularly have been a nightmare for those of us who belong to the state. It has been a tragedy of monumental proportions. I am often irritated when people ask me here, what is the solution to the Kashmir problem, as if it was some kind of a mathematical equation. It is thousands of men, women and children who have suffered. Unprecedented disaster has overcome the state. Thousands of people, many of them young, in the prime of their youth, including security forces, have been killed. Lakhs of people have been uprooted from their hearths and homes and are today in the wilderness and eking out a miserable existence in refugee camps in their own country. Hundreds of crores of rupees worth of trade and tourism and commerce have been disrupted. And most tragic of all, GBG, the civilizational structure, the psychological ambience of that state has been destroyed. Young children wake up with nightmares. Deep psychic wounds have been inflicted upon the people. And therefore let us never forget that these 7 years have been a nightmare, and it is essential that the people of the rest of India must understand this. We certainly need financial support. We need planners, we need roads, we need buildings, but above all, we need understanding, we need compassion, we need empathy. The people of Jammu and Kashmir are not going to go around India with a begging bowl. It is the responsibility of the 95 crores of people of India who constantly say that Jammu and Kashmir is a part of India. They have got to now show that they really feel that. When the shrine of Sheikh Nuruddin Nurani, the most revered saint in Kashmir, burnt down, how many people of the 95 crore inhabitants of India went there and expressed their sympathy? My wife and I went because perhaps we had deep feelings for the people. Please remember that in Jammu and Kashmir, religious differences do not divide people, because there is at the heart of all the great religions the glowing awareness of spiritual luminosity. And that is what these great saints and seers. That is why the valley has been the home of the Vedas. It has been the home of Buddhism. It has been the home of Laleshwari, the great prophetess of Kashmir, of Shah Hamdan, of the Sufis, of the Sikhs, of the Dogras, of the Vaishnavas, of the Shaivas. It has been one of the unique civilizational melting pots of world history. And therefore now we have got to come out of this nightmare. And the first essential prerequisite of coming out of this nightmare was the re-establishment of a government with popular consent, the restoration of democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. And I would like here to place on record our appreciation of the role played by the Election Commission, and particularly by my good friend here who is presiding over this function this evening, for having taken the step at the right time, because at the wrong time, even a correct step sometimes misfires. At the right time, they took this step, and this has resulted in, once again, the restoration of democracy. Dr. Farook Abdullah has become Chief Minister for the 4th time. He first became Chief Minister when his respected father, Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah, passed away. Then there were elections. In 1983, he became Chief Minister, but soon thereafter, he was toppled. I do not want to go into history, but I would like to remind you, my dear Dr. Farook, the day that your government was toppled as a result of an intrigue from Delhi, you came to my house. You said, Dr. Sahab, ye dekhiye, kya ho gaya hai? And you will remember my word. मैंने कहा आप इंशाल्लाह फिर आएंगे, लेकिन आपको सब्र के साथ काम लेना पड़ेगा. That was a test. And for Dr. Farook to have lived virtually in exile for so many years, but never to have lost faith in the principles that guide our democracy, and never to have lost faith in the people of Jammu and Kashmir, I think has been a very great event. And we see today the result of that. Today, the National Conference has swept the elections in Jammu and Kashmir. Many people were astounded when just on the eve of the elections, I came out openly in favor of the National Conference. I am an independent. I do not today belong to any party, but I came out, and my son, I said, Dr. Farook came to me, and Sheikh Abdullah, who headed the National Conference, was so closely associated. That is the first basic principle. Because if we do not have this basis, then everything else collapses. That signature, Hari Singh, on the instrument of accession 49 years ago, that has become the basis. You are a great jurist, Bishop, to restore a special position for Jammu and Kashmir in India. And I would like to ask, why should Jammu and Kashmir not have a special position? It has always had a special position. From the very beginning. All the other states also signed the instrument of accession, but the other states subsequently merged. There was no merger as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. It still has a separate graciousness. After all, you take United Kingdom, there England has its own position, Scotland has its own position, Ireland has its position, the Channel Islands have their position. Even in a small country like the United Kingdom, you will find 4 or 5 different modalities, and for the Kashmiri leader to come out clearly and unequivocally with the commitment that he was going to give effective regional autonomy to Jammu, to Kashmir and to Ladakh. This has been one of the major problems faced here. There has been an unfortunate tendency to overlook the multi-regional nature of Jammu and Kashmir state and to treat it as if it was a single homogeneous entity, which it is not. People talk about the Kashmir state. There is no such state. The state is of Jammu and Kashmir. And Ladakh, of course, is the and. Jammu and Kashmir, that is the name. Jammu, Kashmir, Tibet High, that used to be my father's title. Tibet then was the word for Ladakh, if you look at the title in Urdu. So, regional autonomy, special position of, let us forget the past. Let us open the borders, let us open the barriers, let them come. Why should they have to go thousands of miles away to Switzerland when they can come to Kashmir just across the border? But let them change their mindset. The paradigm that you spoke about, paradigm that the eloquent gentleman who opened these proceedings, whom I do not know exactly who he was, Mr.